So again, we are talking about unhealthy relationships, and as counselors, I want you to know that it is actually more common than you think, right? Your kids aren't going to come tell you about it, but we see it more. So what is teen violence? That is teen dating violence. It's a pattern of these abusive behaviors. In a romantic or intimate relationship between teens, this abuse is used by one partner to gain and maintain power. That's the biggest part when we're talking about how to know. Is one person trying to have more of the power and control over the other. It takes many forms, including physical, sexual, emotional, and digital abuse. So there's not just, when we think of abuse, we typically think physical, and there's so much more, especially at this level. So again, you're probably thinking, well, this isn't something my kids would struggle with. But actually, pulling up some stats, 1 in 12 high school students have experienced physical dating violence, 1 in 10 sexual dating. 33% of kids do not tell or won't tell their parent if something is going wrong in their relationship that would be considered abuse. These were the staggering facts for some Texas, and this kind of was scary to me. More than 75% of 16 to 24-year-olds in Texas have experienced teen dating violence, or they know someone who has. And that's 3 times more higher than the national average, which is 19%. And according to the Texas Council on Family Violence, 19 people under 21 were killed in domestic violence incidents in Texas in 2022. Young women between the ages of 16 and 24, that's the highest rate that we report knowing someone who has been hit, slapped, or pushed by a partner. So this all came from the Texas Advocacy Project. Am I still on, Dr. Herbo, on this one, or do I need to move it? Okay. All right, so let's talk about the many forms. We normally just think physical, but it's so much more than physical. There's emotional and verbal. That's the insults, the jealousy, the gaslighting, the humiliation. I know we hear gaslighting a lot, but basically, gaslighting is where they make the other person feel like they're the crazy one, right? We obviously know what sexual is. Digital and online, the constant texting, the tracking their location, the threat that they're going to share photos. So I want to ask you guys, if you're thinking of dating violence, which of these types that are up here do you think teens are the least likely to recognize as abuse? What do y'all think? Okay, yes. Okay, emotional and digital. That is the most under-recognized. And we're going to talk about why. But let's pay attention to some of the early signs. Now, before I even get into this, I want to say these are warning signs, right? So paying attention, that's important. But noticing does not necessarily mean that there's abuse going on, okay? Some of it's just natural changes that can happen. So kind of try to see if you can recognize the difference. But here's some possible early warning signs. The partner is jealous, okay? Or you notice that your kid is constantly checking their phone or their social media, or their partner asks for their logins. We see this a lot, and as counselors, we're like, well, why did you give them your login? But they do that. They do the Snapchat, the Insta, the whatever else they do. They ask for their logins, okay? Another red flag may be that their partner texts or calls them excessively. And again, it's kind of hard to know because sometimes you're like, okay, are they just being a typical teenager? But if you get a gut feeling like, I don't think most people text 48 times in 1 minute, you're probably right. You're probably right. Have you noticed that your teen becomes withdrawn, anxious, or they avoid hanging out with you or their friends? Are they constantly worried about upsetting their partner? That's something we hear in the counseling office of like, well, I was going to go do whatever, but so-and-so would get mad at me. Well, why would they get mad at you? Well, because they get mad when I hang out with my friends. That's a huge red flag. If you notice a sudden change in their mood, their clothing, their grades, if their grades start to decline, or if they start to not really care as much about their school attendance, that's another one. Again, Not saying if you see this that they're automatically in an abusive relationship. Just know your kid and kind of know some of the signs. If their partner tells them where they can go, who they can see, or what they can wear, that's a huge one. If your teen makes excuses, if they're always apologizing for their girlfriend or their boyfriend's behavior, could be a sign. Could be a sign. If they have injuries or bruises that they try to cover up or they can't explain, that could also possibly be a sign. Here's what you can ask yourself. Have you noticed that they're isolating more, or are they hiding parts of their relationship? Are they not telling you what's going on? And I want to point out on this too, this is a side topic, but I see this a lot of times too in like dating relationships. I see this with girls and like BFFs, and they get super almost too intrusive of their friends and who they hang out with, and why are they hanging out with so-and-so more than they're hanging out with them. But do you notice that your teens start to get nervous when texting or they're getting a message from their boyfriend or their girlfriend? So how would a teen describe it? They're not going to come to you probably and say, oh, mom, oh, dad, I think I am being manipulated, right? But they may think, well, he never hit me, but he does take my phone, and he says that I don't need anyone else but him, okay? They will often rationalize this behavior as, oh, they just love me, or mom, they're just really showing me attention. What can you do? And we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth, but the biggest thing that we can do as parents is listen, okay? And listen without judgment and reflect back what you hear. Encourage those relationships, those healthy relationships. Encourage them to describe, hey, what do you think like a healthy relationship looks like? This is also why I bring this up now, because these are the conversations you can have before they get in a relationship, right? If you have a freshman, start talking to them now, like, hey, what do you think a healthy relationship looks like? And when you see things on TV, talk about it. Like, is that something that you will allow? So there's a difference between healthy, unhealthy, and abusive. So that's the big thing I wanted to see on this. There's a difference between unhealthy and abusive, okay? Unhealthy is if you notice that they start, like their person they're dating starts to pick and choose when they communicate, they're disrespectful, they can't trust them, they lie, they try to take control, they want to only spend time with their partner, they're pressured into activities are unequal economically. Abusive is where that communicating becomes hurtful or threatening. If they start to mistreat them, if they accuse the other of cheating when it's untrue, we see this a lot too. If they deny that their actions are abusive, if they're controlling, if they isolate their partner, that's another huge one that we see is the isolation. This is something that I try to teach a lot with my kiddos, especially because I talk about brains all the time, but their brains aren't completely formed. And in high school, they think a relationship is the end-all be-all, right? Like, oh, no, I'm going to be the one in 1,000 and whatever that actually dates my boyfriend or girlfriend longer than a month. Probably not, right? It could happen, but it doesn't happen that often. But they feel like their relationship is, no, mine's different than everybody else. So I work really hard with my teens to work on a balance and boundaries, right? Don't put all your eggs and your time with one person, because what are you going to do when you've given up all your friends and then the guy or the girl leaves you, right? So that's something, and they don't like that too much. This is something that you can look up. It's just a power and control wheel for teens. The biggest thing I want to reiterate is that one is always trying to gain control or power. What does that look like? Okay, it can be, they isolate, they peer pressure, they're angry, they get emotional, they're moody, you never know what's coming. They make them feel bad, they put them down. It blows my mind, some of the things that they say about one or another. They play mind games, they humiliate them, they use their social status, right? They intimidate them, they minimize or they deny blame. That's another huge one I see. They make threats, sexual coercion. And again, back to the isolating. So this is online. You can look up Teen Power Will. Oops. Oh, it went backwards. Okay, so how can you help? Again, you don't want to wait till they're in a relationship. Start having those conversations early. Start talking about, what do you notice about your friends' relationships? Well, if that was you, what would you do? If Susie is always getting yelled at by Bobby, how would you handle that? What do you see on social media? Again, that's huge. Talk to them, because we know what they see is normally not what's accurate, right? What do they see on shows? Use those I statements. Hey, I noticed that every time you get off the phone with Billy, like, your attitude changes. Is everything okay? Versus, why do you let him get you in a bad mood, right? Anytime we go to accuse, our kids are going to back off. So keep it like, hey, I noticed, or hey, you know what? I felt like you were going to go hang out with your friends until you talked to Bobby and he got upset with you. Stay calm and curious. Again, our kids don't want to lose that freedom. So avoid the ultimatums. If you're telling them, you know what, if you see them, you're grounded. More than likely, they're gonna try to take that as like, okay, I'll show you, right? So try to keep it to where it's not a like either or. Let's talk about what I felt uncomfortable in that moment. Like, hey, I really feel uncomfortable that he only wants you to hang out with him on the weekends. I just don't know if I agree with that. What are your thoughts? Versus you can't see him. Set those expectations, right? Discuss, what does it look like to respect? What does it look like to have privacy? You are allowed to have privacy. And your person you're talking to does not need to know where you are at all times. You do not have to share your location. I can't stress that enough. What does open communication look like with your person? And I want to also say, and I don't want to step on toes, but if we're not modeling this, then our kids are picking up on what we're doing, right? So if at home, if they're not seeing respect between you and your spouse, then it's going to be hard to mirror that in a relationship. But have your clear family rules. What are your rules about texting, about sharing your locations, and what are your rules about digital behavior? Again, I always tell my kiddo, like, blame it on me, always. So what can we do? Again, even with those right intentions, sometimes, well, you have teenagers. Everything we do comes across as, you're just being pushy, or you're nagging me. So everything can come across as being judgmental, and then that puts them automatically on the defensive, right? And sometimes they'll stay in it just to prove you wrong. So keep that communication open. Also, talk to them about what is normal, right? And what's normal for you is not normal for them. And if you happen to be older-ish, like me in our 40s, it looks totally different now, the whole dating thing. And that's super hard, well, for me, because I'm like, we didn't have social media, praise the Lord, but you didn't see everything. It wasn't in your face. So we do also have to understand dating is a little bit different now than it was back then. But remind them, you know what, you have the right to say no. And but you also have to respect the rights of others, because maybe you have the kiddo that is a little more domineering in the relationship. Talk to them about what does that look like. If you do feel like they're being abused, let them know it's not their fault, and nobody deserves it, no matter what. No matter what, they do not deserve it. But make it clear again, you don't blame them, and don't guilt or shame them, because they already feel a whole lot of guilt and shame, right? So not being able to get out of it, that is hard for them. So again, when do we intervene as parents? If you feel like your teen's safety is at risk, you automatically, you intervene, right? If you notice there's threats, if you notice there's stalking, if you notice there's physical harm, let the authorities know, or let our school officers know. We have 2 amazing school officers that they can handle it. But document, what are they doing? Document their abusive messages if you can. I know that's hard. Create a safety plan. And this is what you do when they are regulated, right? Not when they've just had a huge argument, or they're like, I'm never going to talk to him again, and you probably are thinking they may, okay? Where can they go? If something happens, who can they call? Let them know that they can always call you, regardless of what time it is, and you won't be upset with them, but you will get them the help that they need. Okay. What do I want us to remember? Again, it's not just physical, it's the power and it's the control. And it doesn't start on day 2 of their relationship, okay? This starts after they have developed that relationship and the kiddo is thinking, oh my gosh, this is too good to be true. He is so nice to me, Mom, you don't understand. Like, I've never had somebody treat me this nice. Okay, that's how it starts. It doesn't start with day 2. They're like, oh, by the way, when we're dating, you can never talk to anybody else again, right? That's not how it does. They work. They kind of slide in. But we need to be very non-judgmental, okay? They're not going to come to us if they think that we're judging, which they already think we judge everything as it is. Start those small conversations now because it can prevent bigger conversations later. But I wanted to talk to you about why do they stay, okay? Because again, in our heads, we're like, why would you take that? They have hope that it'll get better, and usually it does. It does get better, but it's temporary, okay? They really do love that person, especially guys, and again, our brains are wired differently at this age, so their connection is way more intense than it is at our age, okay? So the way that their brain works, they really feel like, okay, this is legit and this is forever. They may have a fear of leaving. They may be scared to leave. Again, this could be that manipulation. This can be, if you leave me, I'm going to show everybody every text you've ever sent me. I'm going to show them every picture you've ever sent me. That's another thing we've got to make sure we talk to our kids about. They don't know, okay, is this abusive or is this just intense? And unfortunately, too, our culture has kind of shown some of our kids that if it's intense, that they love you more. That's not true, but that's what the message that they're getting. They already feel guilty or ashamed, like the abuse is their fault. Mom, no, he got mad because I told him that I'd go to dinner and then I changed plans at the last minute, right? They think it's their fault. A lot of times they think that nobody will believe them. They have feelings for their abuser, and they're, again, hoping it's going to change. It's